Congress leader Rahul Gandhi has once again been targeted by the BJP for comments that he has made on India while traveling abroad to the United States of America. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo story. Our focus today on the program is somewhat different. We're trying to understand why the fight between Prime Minister Modi and Rahul Gandhi is a global one. After all, this time it is Rahul Gandhi's speech abroad or speeches abroad that have become the focus of public debate. But in the past, the Prime Minister too has quite successfully used the diaspora factor to enhance his public image, not just abroad, but even at home. Is it correct? Is it appropriate? Does it make sense to take India's political domestic battle across the shores? Why does it happen? Or is it a natural byproduct of the globalized, internet mediated times that we live in? A lot to unpack on the program, and we have a very, very interesting set of speakers coming up to look at this interesting question. Why do today's politicians feel the need to take their political differences, their political concerns to a global audience? Let's introduce our guests on the program today. Joining us is Zafar Sareshwala. Mr. Sareshwala has in the past, once upon a time, been a critic of Prime Minister Modi, then a fan of Mr. Modi. How does he look at the unfolding politics today? We'll find out in a moment from now. Professor Shruti Kapila is with us. She's a professor at Cambridge University, has been an interlocutor for one of Mr. Gandhi's sessions at Cambridge, in fact. So this is she's the right person to speak on this subject. It's good to see you, Shruti. Also joining us is Seema Sirohi. Seema Sirohi is one of India's best-known columnists. She has a piece in the Economic Times suggesting that Mr. Gandhi had a meeting at the White House that was kept under wraps, and also a very interesting critique of Rahul Gandhi's US visit, and we'll be finding out more from her in a moment from now. Also joining us is political analyst from Bangalore, Anurag Naidu. Good to see you, Anurag. And finally, Salman soars of the Congress Party is with us as well. Thank you very much, everybody. And Seema, I think I must start with you before we play out one of the many clips that Rahul Gandhi's speeches have got, India debating. I want to bring up your article. And in your article for the Economic Times, you call it Rahul Ji's Big Day Out, and you have a mixed assessment of how he fared, and we'll come to that later. You also suggest that Mr. Gandhi had a meeting at the White House that was kept under wraps. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Well, see, the meeting with the administration officials was just one part, probably a very small part of the entire visit. The visit, as I say in my column, went rather well, and he didn't, make any sort of criticism of the government or the impending visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So the meetings that he had with the administration officials are kind of routine. They used to be more routine than they are now, perhaps. But US officials meet all sorts of political parties, the entire, set of opposition leaders. The US embassy keeps in touch with them, just as the Indian embassy here has outreach to various leaders. When we get into the thick of the elections, they will make some sort of outreach to the Republican candidates. I mean, it's only natural that that would happen in a democracy.
Okay, let me actually segue into what Rahul Gandhi said. He had several public events. Seema Sirohi says he didn't actually this time directly target the Prime Minister or the larger Indo-US relations, but his comments on one of his by now pet phrases, Mohabbat ki dukaan in Nafrat ka bazaar, evoked very sharp reactions from the BJP. And I just want to play out first what Mr. Gandhi said, and we'll also play out what the Foreign Minister Jaishankar said in response. Listen in first to Rahul Gandhi.
You have to understand, this is Congress Party's power. This is Congress Party's power. We are ready to, we are not being violent, we are not being aggressive, right? We are not being nasty. That is our strength. Am I not right? Did we shout at him and say, no? No, we didn't. We will not change our behavior. We will not change our behavior. Because you cannot, the thing is you cannot, please understand, you cannot cut hatred with hatred. It's impossible. Right? It is impossible to do. I'm not interested in trying to cut hatred with hatred. मैंने बोला था नफरत के बाजार में मोहब्बत की दुकान. आपका काम नफरत फैलाने का है, हमारा काम मोहब्बत फैलाने का है. हम आपके लिए आपका काम थोड़ी करेंगे, हम तो अपना काम करेंगे. Right? So that is what we have to work on. There is a challenge in India. There is an attack on the democratic structure of our country. Full-scale attack on our institutions, on our judiciary, on our media, and it is your responsibility and our responsibility to defend the idea of India. And the idea of India, the central piece of the idea of India, is our constitution and our democracy. Modern India cannot exist without our constitution and without our democracy.
Salman Soars, the BJP, three of the BJP's leaders have written angry letters on this. The foreign minister responded to the speech. We'll hear from him in just a moment. The question will again be asked. Why does Mr. Gandhi talk about India's democracy outside of India? And this question will be asked again and again. I think my interest is in understanding the larger question. Why has this now become a global conversation for either side?
Well, I'm not sure this is something new. Indians have been living abroad for a long time. There are probably about upwards of 30 million people who of Indian origin who are outside the country. Of those, I would say probably about 35 to 40% are what we call non-resident Indians, like I am too. And these are people who are voters in the country. And by the way, even those who are citizens of other countries have deep relationships with India, as they should. So I don't think this is anything new. In fact, the BJP has benefited a lot from being connected to the diaspora over the last, I would say, 10 to 20 years, maybe longer. And so the contestation is for the hearts and minds of Indians everywhere, whether they're in India or elsewhere. But of course, when Mr. Gandhi goes out and makes a speech anywhere, regardless of what he says, he will be targeted. But the fact of the matter is that if the BJP, which keeps saying that he's irrelevant, he's a nobody, it doesn't matter what he says, and whenever he says something, all sorts of ministers come out and start criticizing him. But what he said in the US, for example, nafrat ke bazaar mein mohabbat ki dukaan, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Of course, there's a lot of hate that's being spread by the BJP and its affiliates in the country. And we have to fight them everywhere, and we have to fight for that mind space, and we have to fight for that the space in the hearts of peoples who matter. And who are these people? They're all Indians.
Okay, let me bring in Zafar Sareshwala. Mr. Sareshwala, actually the Prime Minister quite successfully created a constituency among the diaspora. A lot of Mr. Modi's earlier trips were really the first instance of somebody using the Indian diaspora almost as an extension of political branding. Today, Rahul Gandhi seeks to do the same, and the BJP is very critical. I know you followed Mr. Gandhi's US visit quite keenly. We were talking about it the other day also. How do you see this debate around the BJP saying कि ये राहुल जो है ये घर की बातें बाहर ले जाते हैं?
See, Barkha, I'll not venture into the political arena, but I'll tell you what. This is coming of age of India. I mean, any publicity, good or bad, is very good. Because I'll tell you why. I have lived in US and I have also lived in UK. About 20 years back, not a single newspaper in London would even mention India remotely. In fact, I remember two very important instances and why this difference has happened. Why Rahul Gandhi is also getting traction and why Mr. Modi is getting a bigger traction. Why? In 99 or 2000, Financial Times, which is the largest broadsheet financial newspaper published in the West, had come out with a separate, supplement on emerging markets. And in that article, they had not mentioned India at all. A country like Turkey was there prominently mentioned. Through some sources, I went and met the editor of Financial Times, and I said, the whole market cap of Turkish economy, the Turkish stock exchange, only 10 Indian companies can measure that. And you have not even mentioned about anything about India. There were countries like Lebanon and Syria mentioned in that article. India was not there. In 1999, 2000, because I'm talking something which is connected with me, financial services. Dow Jones came up with an Islamic equity index in 99 or 2000. And in that index, not a single Indian company was there. I met the CEO of Dow Jones and I said, at least I can give you 10 Indian companies who need to be mentioned. So about 15, 20 years back, India
Right.
was not there at all.
So
This
how do
has
you how do you see the political fight
yeah,
being taken
yeah, yeah,
outside? Briefly, because I need to go to Seema for a second
yeah,
before I
yeah.
go
I'll
to
tell you why.
Shruti
Now,
and
since
Anurag. Yeah, briefly.
last
Yeah.
15 years, India is seen. And of course, lot of governments have done, but Mr. Modi took it to the next level. And I'll tell you why, because I have accompanied him in first 8 or 9 visits. When he visited US for the first time, I was there with him in Japan, in Saudi Arabia, in UAE. He has that style of connect with the people. And when he came for the first time, he wrote an op-ed in New York Times. He wrote an op-ed in Guardian when he went to the UK. So Mr.
Yeah.
Modi connected with the Indian diaspora and also largely with the people there
So
and the political
so
parties
you
there.
so you
I
seem to be saying
I'll add.
yeah.
I'll finish now. So that is giving advantage to Mr. Rahul Gandhi also, because India is now seen as some in a position. So
Okay.
even Rahul Gandhi is seen as a politician of
Got
opposition.
it. Got it.
He
You're
is
saying
getting
there's greater
traction because
interest.
India is now on center stage.
You're saying there's greater interest in the India story, and which is why comments by both of these gentlemen are making waves. I just, before I come to Shruti and Anurag, Seema, briefly, one of the arguments you make in your column is that while Mr. Gandhi did well, he sometimes, and I'm quoting here, he sometimes felt like a Hallmark card, and at other times someone with a little more edge. But you also say that the groups that were organizing Mr. Gandhi's visit, you would locate them on the extreme end of the spectrum. You say that their rhetoric goes from being anti-BJP to on some days anti-India. And I want you to talk a little bit about that, because that's something that the BJP is likely to, of course, pounce on.
Right. So these groups are affiliated with the larger sort of Arab Muslim groups as well in the US. Some of their office holders, some of the people who have been associated with these groups have had links to extremist organizations, not just in Pakistan, but also in the Arab world. So they're controversial in some senses. And ever since the BJP came to power, it is a fact that Indian Muslims living abroad have felt somewhat alienated, right? So they have sort of joined hands with other activist groups here. Now, some secular Hindu groups, the Hindus for secularism, those groups are also part of this larger coalition. So I would say that this one particular group that seemed very active on Capitol Hill on behalf of Mr. Gandhi is controversial now. Many people kind of stay away from them because of their extreme rhetoric. They've called Modi a Nazi and things like that. So it's very, very extreme. Congressional staffers have become a little bit alarmed by their propaganda and their constant press releases, their constant briefings, quote unquote, briefings that they hold.
Yeah, so let me bring in Shruti now and then Anurag. Shruti, I think that's one of the things that's been a subject of some commentary, juxtaposed, of course, with Mr. Gandhi's comments on the Indian Muslim League. But my larger interest still remains in my original question. Why does this conversation need to be global? I'm not saying Rahul is the only one who does it. Mr. Modi, Mr. Gandhi has done it now. Mr. Modi has done it in the past. Why? We're trying to understand why.
I mean, historically, it has always been the case. I don't think it starts with Mr. Modi. I mean, it starts with Nehru, it's Indira Gandhi. Leadership, political leadership is not only national. And all the more so when India is a rising power, there's a lot of interest globally in the place of India and where its future is going to be. So the world is a stage for Indian politics. In fact, I don't want to belabor this point too much, but of course, actually, it's Mr. Modi who is the exception here because of his slightly, his bumpy kind of international image in the early 2000s, and his, as it were, rehabilitation post his victory in 2014. It has been pretty, par for the course for Indian leaders to kind of project an international persona for themselves. And that goes back to also the contestation of what India might be. So it looks partisan today because there is a kind of partisan and a kind of political debate on the future identity of India. So you have a paradoxical thing. India is a rising power. Everyone's interested in it. But there are also now two very competitive narratives about what India is going to look like in the coming decade.
Right. That's interesting. And I want Anurag to respond to that because I think it's correct to say that India is a global conversation today. And sometimes it's a contradictory conversation. Right. So you have sort of global opinion columns and global reportage on what is called diminishing freedoms. But you also have as sort of compelling commentary on the rise of fintech or infrastructure. And maybe it's fair to say that everything you say about India and its opposite has always been true. But do you believe that it's a slippery slope to take this political debate outside? Anurag.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting conversation, Barkha, the comparison that you made. If you see the global piece, the global articles that are written, things that are written on a subjective topics, they have been having some kind of a connection, some history. They write on India's, freedom situation, India's socio-political situation. But the articles that are written on data, whether it is on numbers, whether it is on economics, they can't go wrong. And they're bound to, even if they don't want to praise India, but just for the sake of the numbers that we are giving to the world, you cannot, go away from the fact that we are doing amazingly well. And although there are some well-wishers, the world is watching us, as Mr. Jaishankar said. This is exactly what we need to understand. There are well-wishers. There are also people and the countries that are envious about us. Last 3 weeks, I've been in Europe, Barkha. I'll tell you one very interesting thing. India is a part of an important conversation everywhere. And people have been questioning about the stand of the opposition party in India. They've been questioning, is Modi like Putin? Is Modi like some other people? Because that's what at the outset is he's invincible. He's a very tall leader. And when they say, oh, your opposition leader, some Gandhi, is he not good enough? I don't buy that argument. I don't buy anyone abroad saying Mr. Gandhi a Papua anyway. He is an opposition leader of my country. Just how I respect Mr. Gandhi abroad, I think Mr. Gandhi also should respect the country, because it is not just a simple cynical comment or a simple comment telling, okay, things are not good, I did not have a good coffee, but he's essentially saying attack on democracy, attack on judiciary, attack on the constitution. These are not simple claims, Barkha, and we need to be serious about it. What is the style of Mr. Gandhi telling? I'm telling you, as a responsible opposition leader, what India expects from is, what are you going to do next? What is your vision for the growth? What is your roadmap for the country to come?
Okay, so what all of you seem to be confirming is that it is quite natural for India to be a global conversation. Shruti, I saw your hand go up. I'll just add a little question of my own, and then you can respond. Indira Gandhi was the leader who coined the idea of the foreign hand. And you would remember one of her famous speeches where she spoke about how we're not going to let foreign critics weaken this country. It's actually a kind of language that the BJP has often adopted to criticize Mr. Gandhi with, even on his trip to the United Kingdom. So I'm just curious to understand, what are the gains when either leader goes outside and says, today I have made things better, as Mr. Modi said, or as Mr. Gandhi says, today things are bad, but we're fighting to make them good again. What is the gain? What is the gain in going to a constituency that doesn't vote?
but can I just say, I don't think you can police these matters. In the global commentariat, the big question today is the rising power of India, of course, a part about the economy, digital, and the rest. But it is also important ideologically because it is not China. It is seen to be a democracy. As a result, there is a great focus in the international conversation on the nature of India's democracy, which is why you have, as it were, the kind of domestic political story going global in that manner. For instance, it is just interesting and a bit disheartening that repeatedly I am going to conferences and workshops where Indian democracy is being compared to Turkey, Russia, rather than, say, America or Britain. So, you have elections coming up in America, Britain, and India within months of each other. Yet the comparative conversation now is that, is India going the Turkey way? Is Modi going to be the new Erdogan with So I think there is a real conversation here in the global world on the nature of India's democracy. And I think, as an opposition leader who's also been disqualified from parliament over a defamation case, it is a political story. You cannot police it by saying, well, this should be said at home, this should be said this should be said elsewhere. I mean, it's interesting on Ukraine, on the kind of war on Ukraine, there's a cross-party consensus. So on foreign policy, there is a cross-party. You can't now hide and lie what is actually happening in Indian democracy. As a result, what happens with the global stages, that also gets politicized. Universities, think tanks, and those kind of stages now become, as it were, occasions for discussing the nature of Indian democracy.
So here's a political question. If you make the point that you can't police this, though different countries have different political traditions. The Americans, for example, are very big on, we don't discuss our politics outside of our shores. Let me play out Foreign Minister Jaishankar's statement in response to Rahul Gandhi with a question of my own. Politically, does it help Mr. Gandhi when he takes this conversation global? Does it make no difference, or does it potentially hurt him? I'm putting all three options on the table. I want to put Jaishankar's statement out for our audience to hear and see, and then we'll come back to our panel. Listen.
जो सवाल था वो राहुल गांधी वाला, देखिए उनकी आदत है कि वो जब बाहर जाते हैं कि वो देश की आलोचना करते हैं, हमारी राजनीति के बारे में टिप्पणी करते हैं। तो जो आपका प्रश्न है कि दूसरों पे इसका क्या असर पड़ता है, अब दुनिया हमें देख रही है, और दुनिया क्या देख रही है? दुनिया देख रही है कि इस देश में चुनाव होते हैं, चुनाव में कभी एक पार्टी जीतती है, कभी दूसरी पार्टी जीतती है। तो अगर देश में डेमोक्रेसी नहीं है तो ये ऐसा परिवर्तन तो आना नहीं चाहिए ना। हर चुनाव का रिजल्ट एक ही होना चाहिए। वैसे 24 का चुनाव रिजल्ट तो वही होगा, हमें पता है। हाँ, पर अगर आप देखें जो ये पूरा नैरेटिव जो है, ये हमारे यहाँ एक देश में नैरेटिव बना है, और जब ये नैरेटिव देश में नहीं चलता या कम चलता है तो इसको बाहर ले जाते, और उनकी अपेक्षा है कि बाहर का सपोर्ट जो है वो देश में चलेगा। मुझे लगता है कि यहाँ आम नागरिक जो है, जो देखिए हमारे यहाँ जितने भी आप बीच में, हमारे यहाँ डेमोक्रेसी है, आपका कुछ भी होगा, मेरा कुछ भी होगा, आपकी पॉलिटिक्स कुछ होगी, हमारी कुछ होगी। हमें देश में जो करें, मुझे इसमें कोई इतराज नहीं, पर मुझे नहीं लगता कि बाहर जाके देश की पॉलिटिक्स को बाहर ले जाना देश के हित में, और मुझे नहीं लगता कि उनकी क्रेडिबिलिटी उसके कारण बढ़ेगी।
I do not believe it's correct to take the politics of the country outside, say what you want to within the sort of boundaries of your nation. Seema, Sirohi, if I can bring you in there. I think Shruti is right. You can't police people. That's ridiculous. Everybody has to forge their own politics. But there is a political question here. The political question is there a backlash potentially when a leader criticizes the country outside of India? Forget a leader, even a public figure. Or is it legitimate politics which you can't confine within geography? I ask you in particular this as a journalist based out of DC. The Americans, Obama would not necessarily come to India and discuss Trump. He wouldn't praise him, but he wouldn't maybe get drawn into that conversation. Hence, I'm intrigued by the political tradition of different countries. Go ahead, Seema.
Well, I think, as others have said on the panel, the conversation about Indian democracy is center stage now. We cannot escape from that. And what Rahul Gandhi was saying and doing over here was meeting sort of traditional supporters of the Congress party, who will then call their friends and family and, consolidate the vote back home. Um, he was also, I think, I didn't write this, but I think he was also projecting himself as perhaps a future prime minister, the face of a united political opposition. So he did mention that in some of his question and answers and speeches, that they are in talks with other parties. The conversation is difficult, but they're getting there. So I think it was a kind of a smart political move to sort of be in the global eye, be in the media, and get kind of an image that his rivals may not have yet.
Yeah, that's it. That's an interesting way to put it. And we see Rahul Gandhi there addressing the National Press Club in DC. Let me bring in Zafar Sareshwala before I come to Salman. Zafar Sareshwala, since you said you accompanied the Prime Minister on one of his first few trips outside of India, do you see this as a risky proposition to take your politics outside? Or do you believe, as everybody else has said, India is a global story, the debate around India is a global conversation, and the domestic politics that follows is also inevitable, and it doesn't really impact anybody electorally, whichever way?
Yeah, absolutely. See, electorally, it doesn't impact. I mean, all this visit of Rahul Gandhi is very good for optics, for headline. But ultimately, he has to win election in India. And none of those people there are going to vote. So, okay, for image building, it is okay. But Prime Minister Modi, I'll tell you, even before this, before he became the Prime Minister, he had a solid connect with the diaspora. As a chief minister also, he made at least 2 visits to Japan. America, he was not allowed, but he visited UK. He visited, Switzerland. He visited several Russian connected countries. China, he visited. So, Mr. Modi, even before he became the chief minister, he had a strong connect with his constituency, and that I'd seen when he was even the chief minister, and he built up on that. So I think what positive has come with that at least now this blue passport has lot of value. I mean, I've been visiting Saudi Arabia, UAE, Turkey even before. Now, even the guy sitting on the immigration desk, the moment you put that Indian passport, he has some good words about India. So, India coming of age, coming on center stage is definitely a very good thing. And I think Mr. Modi has taken it to the next level that
Okay.
I've seen with the visits.
And
Uh,
yeah, go ahead.
so,
Briefly.
in that context, India is a story. India has come on center stage. It is that because recently I was in Turkey. Now I saw an editorial written on India in one of the largest selling dailies there. Barkha, I'll end with that. Had you ever seen all these foreign publications like Guardian or Financial Times or New York Times or Washington Post, even newspapers in Europe, in UAE, Arab news, these papers
Yeah.
having Indian correspondent or columnist? I'd never seen this 20 years back.
So
So
let
India
me
is a story and it will continue to remain this way
let
or
me
that way.
let me put it to Salman then, that there are two narratives of the India story globally. One is, the Post, the New York Times have front page stories on the restless protest. They called it a diminishing space for dissent in India. That's one kind of India story that's playing out globally. The other kind of India story playing out globally is the American president telling the prime minister at a meeting of the G7, you're so popular, it's become a problem for me. Mr. Modi is scheduled now to address the US Congress, right? That's also the India story. Now, as a political opposition, uh, Mr. Modi is also your prime minister. How do you navigate, or how does your leader navigate that thin line when he, in this case, Mr. Gandhi, is outside of India?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. as far as India's foreign policy is concerned, where the interests of the country's, the national interest is concerned, then the political opposition, whether it's Congress or anybody else, and the government, we all work in tandem. But as far as the politics of the country is concerned, if people are writing bad things about, what's happening in India in terms of, say, press freedom or democracy or decline of space for dissent, that is not Rahul Gandhi's doing. Who asked Delhi police to arrest female wrestlers who are champions on the day that the new parliament was to be inaugurated? Did Rahul Gandhi ask them? And did Rahul Gandhi then go and tell New York Times and the Washington Post to put those images on their front page? Does Rahul Gandhi have that kind of influence? This is ridiculous. The point is that we are in the opposition. We believe, and I think it is reasonably accurate, that the BJP and the RSS and this entire ecosystem is destroying Indian democracy. And we stand against that. And we are proud to stand against that. We'll stand against that everywhere on this planet. Because Indian democracy is not BJP's they are not the ones who gave it. The founders of independent India gave it to us, and we will cherish it, and we will protect it, and we'll fight for it. And I think that is reasonable, that's sensible. And for that matter, if Rahul Gandhi goes out and makes a speech and talks about what the Congress party stands for and why we are fighting this battle, then we have to. No matter what Rahul Gandhi says outside, he could even praise Prime Minister Modi and they'll still attack him. So this is not, as Mr. Jaishankar said, wo jate hain and he speaks against the country. He's not speaking against the country because Mr. Jaishankar, who's been made a minister by, because who would make him a minister? It's Modi who made him a minister. So he can say that, look, he's speaking against the government because from his against the country, because from his perspective, Modi is India. That's him. Okay. We don't care about that.
I will, of course, remember the another Indira Gandhi analogy on that critique, the slogan of India is Indira and Indira is India. But before I come to Shruti and Anurag for last comments, there is a interesting question. As we look at the rise of populist politics everywhere globally, the BJP has been channeling Rahul Gandhi's trips outside of India into domestic political material. Is it working? Is it not working? We don't know. But I'm going to play a short clip of Smriti Irani, then come to Anurag and give Shruti the last word. Listen.
Well, for a lady to converse on a topic called Mohabbat Ki Dukaan would be a tad bit unchivalrous. But let me say this. When you talk about Mohabbat, does that include killing of Sikhs? When you talk about Mohabbat, does that include kidnapping of women in Rajasthan? When you talk about Mohabbat, does that include denouncing the Hindu way of life? When you talk about Mohabbat, does it mean partnering with those who want to bring India to a standstill? When you talk about Mohabbat, does that Mohabbat compel you to go seek outside intervention against your own democracy? तो ये कैसा इश्क है जो देश से नहीं अपनी पॉलिटिकल सियासत से है?
Anurag, this is the point that I was trying to make, that this is now the subject of domestic politics. Now, either it is rhetoric and it doesn't matter one way or the other, or it is able to channel a certain kind of nativism, a certain kind of identity politics. Which way do you think it is?
Barkha, I think if we allow somebody to, speak about India, let about, criticizing India, we should also allow domestic people to quote his statements abroad, right? There's nothing wrong. She's quoting in India and she's trying to sell a narrative which if people sell, they have elected her from Amethi. So her stand is vindicated. And if people continue to elect, maybe people are with them. So it's a democracy, isn't it? So, but what I'm actually trying to understand here is, there's nothing wrong in building a self-image, Barkha, because using an Indian diaspora abroad for building a self-image is nothing wrong. I mean, they are very active, even though though they are not voters, they are extremely active on social media, and they have this influencing power, setting up the narratives on the run up to the elections. But tell me one leader across the globe, as you rightly pointed out, who speaks, otherwise in going to any other country. I can only remember of some countries like Pakistan.
But the Prime Minister has also done it. We pulled out a headline from 2015, Anurag, and we can bring it up. And the Prime Minister said that there was a time that people used to be ashamed of being Indian, and now things had changed. So if you remember, that time the Congress targeted him, and that's why there's a certain revolving door politics to this. I'm just saying both leaders have done it in their time.
Oh yes, absolutely. But let's also understand that Mr. Modi's statement in the past was more subjective, and of course, there were times because of the atrocities that were carried out on the Indians when they were minorities in countries like US, UK, and otherwise. So he was quoting that. But today, the attack of Rahul Gandhi is far more pointed, Barkha. It's not subjective. It is pointed to one person, one party, one RSS, one logic, and one ideology. So that is where the whole problem lies. He's weakening India's stand globally. Rather, he should be telling, okay, come to India. Maybe you take the incentives that you're given now, but when I come to power, I'll probably give you better incentives. Something like that. He should go as a brand ambassador for India, although he was not in parliament today, but he's one of the tallest leaders in the country. Let's accept that he should go and promote India's ethos and spirit, rather than saying that he's giving sharp and pointed attack. That is nothing but he took Mr. Modi's image.
I'm out of time. I'll give Shruti the last word. Anurag draws a distinction between how Prime Minister Modi spoke about India and how Mr. Gandhi's critique is about the BJP. And Mr. Modi's critique was not about Rahul Gandhi. That can be debated. The larger question remains, is this a high-risk political strategy? Is there a danger that when you speak about democracy outside, the BJP will take all of that and convert, and use it as clay to mold a political narrative going into 2024?
I think it cuts both ways. It's also allowed Mr. Gandhi to relaunch or kind of have a different kind of image, which is post Bharat Jodo Yatra, to say, well, he's here as a kind of contender to the top job. So I think it works. I think the whole global story is a stage now. And I also think that, as I said, I just want to end on repeating the fact that actually there is a debate on what Indian democracy looks like today. And I think Mr. Gandhi also taps into that. And at the same time, Mr. Modi is also very interested in his own international image. After all, the idea of Vishwa Guru is also something that is going to come up in the domestic kind of national election campaign. So I don't think you can draw a kind of very sharp line between what is national, what is global at this point, and which is why this debate is partisan, it is political, and it is high stakes. I think the BJP will, in any case, its political strategy, its political campaigning has always focused in a particular manner. What you're seeing a difference now is a kind of fight back on the Congress side, which is the new thing here, which is really why we are having this discussion. Because for almost a decade, Mr. Modi has dominated the political script on what India must be, what it's going to look like, and in fact, his own role into both the national and international trajectory. And it's the first time you really are getting, I wouldn't say a kind of even contestation, but a contestation on the ideas of India. What is the kind of political leadership? What are the kind of visions for the future? And the world is a stage for it.
Okay, I think that is the bottom line that we can agree on. India is no longer confined within its own borders, as it were, as the debate around our immediate future is now in its last mile, at least to 2024, when the general election takes place. It has been a fascinating conversation. I thank all of you, and thank you to our audience. See you tomorrow at the same time. Goodbye. We started Mojo right here in this basement. Just 4 people. And now we're about to hit our first 1 million subscribers. So this is to say thank you to all of you for your support, for your respect, and for your encouragement. We've always gone to where the story is. During the pandemic, when television's big anchors were hunkered down in their studios or at their homes, we hit the road. We traveled from Delhi to Kerala, covering 30,000 kilometers in our small car, reporting from inside ICUs and inside slum tenements. Whether it's flash floods or war zones, we've always put our boots on the ground. In fact, we're just back from Punjab, tailing the Khalistani fugitive Amritpal Singh. And through all of this, we have always put you, the people, first. In an age of partisan polarized media where most journalists are either chamcha ya morcha, we believe the story is sacred and the truth of the story is what matters. And now as we get ready for the next step, we need your help. Become a Mojo member and get first access to all our big interviews. Get a chance to ask our newsmakers questions. Get a chance to write and report for us for both our website and our channels. And also, interact with me and my colleagues directly through AMA sessions. Literally, ask me anything. Click on the join now right next to the subscribe button, and yes, also subscribe if you haven't yet, and become a Mojo member for just 159 rupees a month. Hope to see lots of you in our community. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.